And I will warn you guys, it's kind of like the spray zone at SeaWorld. So if you wanna like slide back a little bit, you are more than welcome. No, you just be aware that I talk loudly, and if I spray it, it's that zone at SeaWorld. So as Janine said, my name is Chris. I go by Permaculture FX online, and I specialize in regenerative agriculture, permaculture, regenerative farming, syntropic agriculture. There's all these fancy terms now. Organic gardening is what we just simply used to call it, but everybody has these fancy words now. For those of you that I've not met before, I started gardening at a very young age. I grew up, my grandma gardening and my mom gardening. I really got interested in gardening in my 20s because I was diagnosed with cancer. And back then, there was not really a naturopathic approach to things. It just didn't really exist. You had your chemo, surgery, and radiation were pretty much the only options. And what I realized is that if I were going to be able to afford to eat healthy, because Whole Foods was like your whole paycheck, I had to grow my own, because there was no way that I could spend that amount of money and eat healthy. And the scary thing now is, prices have skyrocketed even more. We don't even really know that the organic food that we're paying for is actually organic, and that's a whole bunny trail that I won't get into. Insert Bill Gates here. And then, there's just all of this stuff around food. And I realized during COVID, during that era, that there was this resurgence in growing our own food and learning how to reconnect with the land. And I think, especially in a culture where people by and large are disconnected from the land and that way of life, we're mostly connected to videos and all these devices, but actually getting our hands back to the soil is pretty rare. And even in the farming world, I will say technology is increasing at an exponential rate, and even in the farming world. There's machines now you can buy for your farm that weed by lasers, and they burn the weeds out going up. I mean, it's insane. And now you have to have a PhD in computer science, special tools. You can't even open the John Deere tractor, by yourself, because everything is so crazy high tech. And I think for a lot of us, we're realizing in a world with a lot of technology and benefits, we miss the land. We miss being connected to nature and taking our shoes off and just going outside and being outside. So at this point in my life, I do regenerative agriculture because I love to eat. I love to eat well. I love to eat healthy. I like to cook. And so I think a lot of people get into permaculture for reasons that are way more noble than me. They want to save the earth and save the planet. And I do want to save the earth and save the planet and all the things, but I also just want to eat. And I would like to eat out of my backyard. I'd like to fix my plate of food. And so in the mid-2000s, I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and we started a pre-K through 12th grade private school. And we started connecting the kids back to agriculture at our private school. So we would have the kindergartners and pre-kindergartners would come into the quailery, and they would collect eggs in the morning, and they would collect eggs from the chickens in the afternoon. The high schoolers would dissect animals that passed away, or they would look at the mycorrhizal fungi under the microscope. And what I started realizing as an educator is that we were created to do life outside and in the garden. And it's a very easy on-ramp to science and mathematics and all of these other areas of life. It just happens naturally in the garden. And those connections were very, very easy. And so when I came here to Florida, I started connecting a lot in Lake County, where I had met Janine, realizing that Florida is very unique because we can grow year round. And if you have moved here from somewhere else, you quickly realize growing in Florida, it's great we can grow year round, but it's really hard farming. It is really, really hard gardening. And nobody told me, by the way, when I first moved to Florida, that nobody gardens in Florida in the summer. Had someone just gave me that memo of stop gardening in April or May, that would have saved me so much weeping and gnashing of teeth and so much anger and frustration. And you get on those Facebook groups and you almost want to just crack your head open against the screen, because you get 25 different answers for simple questions. Most of the answers are terrible, by the way, and it's hard to find a real answer of how do you do this in Florida. And I think a lot of folks have this notion in their mind that we have to have 10 or 2,000 acres to be able to garden and grow our own food, but you really don't have to. I mean, even when I was in Kansas City, Missouri, I had a postage stamp backyard, still had 25 chickens, still was growing annual vegetable gardens, had a little tiny greenhouse, and had a backyard food forest, and was supplying for 4 to 5 people. And so it is doable to do food forest and gardening, even in small backyards, and yes, even in HOAs. So I design edible landscape design for postage stamp yards all the way up to 2,000 acres in Norway, and like truly. And so the spectrum of people that want to grow their own food is broad, but there's something that we can do no matter what size yard you have. There's something that you can incorporate. There's a way that you can reconnect to your food source, aside from just going down the organic section that's only this big at Publix, and it's getting smaller, I feel like, and so for those of you that have a smaller backyard, maybe you're not gonna grow 100% of your own food, but there's a lot of great local farms. Haw Creek Cattle Company is one of them, where you can buy your own beef that is grass-fed and grain-finished, and you can buy locally and support local farmers and still be connected to the land locally, to food, and we're so fortunate in this area also to have the farmers market at St. Augustine at the amphitheater, and there's still 5 or 6 actual farmers that are truly growing their own food. And it's a little sad to me to see a lot of these farmers markets are more makers markets than they are farmers markets. You ask the farmers, well, why aren't you selling at the markets anymore? That's a whole other conversation, but it's hard to find ways to find those farmers and to reconnect with the land. But I do believe you can do it in your backyard. You may not be offsetting all of your food costs, but if you can do some, if you can have one meal a week that you harvest out of your own backyard, that's one time less you're not paying the CEO of Publix or Target, for their supposedly organic foods. And so it doesn't really matter what the size is, hopefully this is gonna work, what the size of yard is that you have. It is still very possible to do edible landscape design. And it doesn't have to look like the Shire from The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. It can be very formal repeating patterns. I've designed a couple times the last month for Florida football players or in the PGA communities where they say they can't grow their own food, but most of them are doing it anyway. They're growing food in their backyard, but it looks from a distance like repeating patterns. Until you get closer, you go, oh, that's a Barbados cherry tree. From a distance, it just looks like a well-manicured bush. So it doesn't have to look like the Shire Gardens out of the Lord of the Rings. It can look very professional and manicured. Even many hospitals, Advent Health in Orlando is one that's doing it. So whatever your style is, we can talk about that later. The why, I feel like, though, is the biggest part of the conversation. I think, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of people the last 6 years got into growing their own food based out of fear. I'm not going to say that's wrong, but I think there's better reasons to grow your own food. I heard so many folks in 2020 go, I've got to have avocados because when the crap hits the fan, I need my avocado. But what I don't want to do, I don't want to plant an avocado tree and forever look at that tree and go, man, I planted that tree when the crap was going to hit the fan. I don't want it to be associated with that. I want my garden to be associated with faith and hope and love and family and rejuvenation and health. I want it to be connected to all of those good things and good memories. So I think before you plant a single tree, establishing the why for you, whether it's your health, it's your family, it's food, it's just a place of peace where you can disconnect from crazy culture and go out and spend time in the garden. Finding the real why is probably more important than anything I'm going to talk about today, because you can learn gardening from a dozen YouTube videos, but you can't learn your why. That's something that you've got to mine out as you're weeding and as you're harvesting. That's something that we work out over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of spending time in the garden. Now, the what is the fun part of developing, whether it's a food forest or an annual vegetable garden, or whatever. Now, for me, a food forest is really a place of annual and perennial production that has lower maintenance. I'm not going to say there's no maintenance. I used to use the phrase stun gardening, severe, total, utter neglect. And that really is a thing. And you can stun garden a food forest. You can 100% totally do that. But I will say, the more you're connected to your food forest, your orchard, and your garden, the more productive it will be. It is going to survive without you. That avocado tree is going to live for 150 years without you. Those olive trees are going to live for 5,000 years. There's some in Jerusalem that are literally 5,000-year-old olive trees. They're going to outlive you. But if you want productivity, if you want abundance, being connected to your system is going to be the biggest game changer. And so for me, it's, lower maintenance. It's having year-round harvests. It's having a space that I'm maximizing the water, the sun exposure, and designing a system that is actually going to last for 100 years or hopefully more than 100 years. And some of these are food forests that are here in Florida. Some of these are ones that are in other states. So the reality is nature by itself, the way that it's designed, it's going to create food without us. It's probably going to take 100 years, but it's going to do it without us. If we were to go right now and buy a plot of land, which costs you like your left kidney in Florida right now, if you're to go buy a 1-acre plot of land with your left kidney, it could be bare bones, nothing on it but grass. And if you walk away for 100 years and come back, what you're going to find is a squirrel is going to have dropped an acorn. A raccoon is going to have brought in a loquat seed from the neighbor's loquat a few blocks away, and it's going to plant that. You're going to start seeing productive things that are naturally going to occur. It's just going to take a really long time. But it always starts with a very similar process. When you plow a field, the first thing that comes back in the springtime are the weeds. And we think, oh, those terrible weeds, those awful weeds. Well, those weeds tell us a lot about the land. They tell us what the soil is doing, what the soil actually needs. And I'll use, for example, dandelions. So dandelions in the Midwest and the northern climates, they grow primarily in soil that is compacted. And they have that carrot-like taproot that's actually breaking up that soil. So when you go and you find plots of land that has a lot of clover on it, that means they have little hairy roots. They're helping stabilize the soil. Areas that are prone to a lot of water, a lot of moisture, dappled shade. Nature is trying to cover that soil. Even when you drive down the road, for example, and you see those blue flowers, chicory, on the side of the road, nature is using chicory to heal a system. And here's the sciencey part of me. One of the things that chicory does, because of its taproot, is a really good mineral miner. Chicory brings up manganese, magnesium, boron, copper, and it helps bind up toxins. Here's what's interesting. The things that are depleted by gasoline, by oil coming out of your car, by the asphalt, are minerals. So what chicory on the side of the road is actually doing, it's cleaning up after our vehicles. Nature knows exactly what weed to put there to fix the problem. When you go in pastures that have a lot of thistle in the pastures, if you take a soil test, I can almost bet my bottom dollar you're going to be deficient in minerals if you're seeing a lot of thistle in the pastures. So it's called reading the weeds or reading the landscape. And so a lot of times what I'll do when I go to somebody's house, they're trying to tell me all the plants that they want to grow, and I'm going, okay, what weeds do I see? Because those weeds are telling me what wants to grow there. It's telling me what is going to do well in that space. So I was at a lady's house the other day, and she was really wanting to do avocados. It was not in a great place, a lot of sugar sand to do avocados. But then when I looked over the fence in her neighbor's pasture, there's 8 or 10 Chickasha plums. It's a native plum in the state of Florida and a couple flatwoods that are kind of cousins of it. And so I was like, what do you feel about plums? Oh, I can't grow plums here. And I was like, well, think your neighbor would disagree because they're literally growing just on the other side of the fence. She'd never noticed them before. So sure enough, she's going to try plums, but we can very easily look at our yards and find out, what is my yard able to produce? What is my yard able to grow? It can grow something. We just have to see what plant wants to be in that right place. And that's what I feel like is unique about permaculture, is that it basically is designing what nature is going to do in 100 years. We're doing it intelligently in 3 to 5 years. Does that make sense? So we're just mimicking nature's patterns. And the reality is permaculture is not some new fancy buzzword. Permaculture draws on a lot of the patterns that indigenous people groups have been doing for millennia. And they're just replicating that language in a new way. The permaculture's popular because online social media, but we're just going back to the basics. We're following what nature is already doing, what nature wants to do, and we're designing that in 3 to 5 years in our backyard versus waiting, for the long run. I guess I got to point that at my computer to go. So if you want these notes, I am going to publish these notes to the group that you RSVP'd in, and I'll also post them to Permaculture FX on Facebook, Instagram, and all of the places. The video of this will be up on YouTube, so it'll be a free video. It'll give me about a week to do the editing or whatever of it, but I will supply all the slides for you, so that way if you don't want to take notes, you don't have to. But if you are wanting to start your own food forest, my hope tonight is we can give you a couple steps of how you design that food forest yourself. And I'm going to use a very small backyard pattern. Now, this pattern can be replicated on 50 acres. You can just extend that design and do another row. So I'm shrinking this way down to one little microcosm of a pattern that basically is just copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And it doesn't always have to look like this. I think this is one way, to do it. And you'll probably find 10 other teachers that will have 10 other different ways to do it. So I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it. I've found that this works for most people. This works for me. So the first thing that I would encourage you to do as you're starting your food forest journey is assess your site and just start looking. As a general rule of thumb, Jeff Lawton, my permaculture teacher, used to say, spend 40 hours looking before your first hour of digging. Just sit and watch the land. And if you're a farmer, you know this. My friend Fred, he's like 77 years old, cattle farmer in Claremont, Florida. And he always says, and he's a punny guy, he's like, a good farmer is outstanding in his field, literally outstanding in the middle of the field and just watching where does the water go and puddle, watching where does the frost settle on those really cold mornings, where's the hottest sun exposure, where's the parts of my pasture that has the worst, absolute, most awful sugar sand, because that's also where you want to put your hay bales when you're feeding in the wintertime. So he's out literally looking in the fields, and you'll walk out in the middle of the day and you'll just see him doing this. So just sitting there watching. And that's what makes a good farmer. It's what makes a good land steward, is you're connected to it. I mean, most of us, if you're a gardener, we all have the same morning routine, right? Like we get our coffee in the morning and we walk around the garden and we check the seeds that we just planted the night before to see if they sprouted. We all know they're not gonna, but we literally do it every single time like clockwork. And then usually we go back at lunchtime and we do the same thing. We walk around the garden every day. We sip, we grab a couple weeds, we might pull a couple leaves for the tea we want to have later in the day. In my gardening system, it's pretty much the same, system. If I'm working in the garden all day, it starts with coffee. About 1 or 2 o'clock, I do my tea, pick a couple things in the garden. About 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock, I start shifting to my green drink, a little collagen in there. 6, 7 o'clock, then it's a glass of wine. I'm walking out with the chickens, hanging out with the girls, because, I don't have a bar life, so I walk around the chicken yard with my glass of wine, and that's my day. Most of us gardeners, we are very rhythmic people. On farm life, there's always crazy things that happen, and usually not at the greatest timing, but we're people of rhythm. So by just sitting and watching your yard, you learn. You start seeing the things that are unique for you. And once you've determined your sun exposure, what kind of soil do I got, and all the things, then start with your soil prep. Now, my personal favorite way, I love a good propane torch burner. I mean, I'm a pyro, so I love any kind of thing that's gonna burn, but those propane torch burners that hook on the end of the tank for the grill, and you can just walk along and weed. It's like people used to, spray the weeds in their driveway. Give me that torch. And I just love to sit in. What a great stress relief, not on the 110-degree days, but it's just great stress relief to burn the weeds out of there. And so if I'm getting a site ready, so imagine this area all the way across the front here is going to be my food forest area. And to be honest, this may be the size of some of your backyards. This room is pretty close to that. Now, you don't have to have that big of a food forest. You can do in a space, let me just paste this off really quick and I'll tell you how close. Oh, this is great. So even only to about here, this is about the length of the pattern that we're going to talk about tonight. How wide is it going to be? Probably only about 6 feet. So this is as big as that pattern really has to be. So you really don't have to have that big of a space. You can cram a lot in that space and it can still look nice. It doesn't have to look wild and unkept. So for me, getting that site ready is the most important step besides picking out and buying your trees. And so I love taking that propane burner, burn all the grass out, because I'm not a lazy farmer, I'm a smart farmer. There are some things that it just takes work and it takes time. You're having to, do shots or whatever with cattle. That takes a long time. That's going to be an afternoon. But things like weeding, I'm not sitting there by hand and digging out all of that sod out of the grass. I'm burning that sucker. There's no way I'm digging all of that grass out. Plus, if you think about it, you paid for that sod to be put in there and you fertilized and all that good stuff. And you've literally got about that much dirt underneath of that sod. That's probably fairly decent topsoil. So you might as well leave it. Don't dig out all that topsoil. Use what's already there. So I burn it first and then I layer it. I wood chip it. If you don't want to burn it, you can always solarize it. Do you know what solarizing is? Basically go to like Lowe's or Home Depot, go to the paint section and get the 3 mil paint tarp. That's just the plastic tarp, and you just roll it out in the spot that you want to kill all the weeds, and then put either logs or landscape staples or bricks or your small child and just have them sit there for 6 months. No, I'm just kidding. Have them sit there for like 6 weeks, and in 6 weeks, Florida sun just cooks everything that's under that, and then you pull that cloth back and you're pretty much done. You've got a great solarized spot. It's a really good, easy way to do it. I would say from the microbiology side, it does damage about 3 to 4 inches of the microbiome of your soil. The earthworms will go down and go deeper and go out, but it does damage the microbiome. So if you do solarize, yes, it is much easier, but you will have to re-inoculate your soil with microbes to kind of boost that back into shape again. You can do horticultural vinegar. I've seen people that really like that method. Horticultural vinegar is different than your grocery store white vinegar. That's going to be 4 to 8%. Horticultural is 35 to 45%. So you get that on your skin, you're going to be screaming and blistering because it is an acid. So it's a little bit more challenging. The other downside with horticultural vinegar is it does mess, because it's an acid, it messes with the pH of your soil until the first really good rain. After that, it does neutralize, but again, it's choices. This is a great alternative, I think, for people that are just used to Roundup. This is probably the next best thing because it is going to neutralize in the soil, but it is an option. My favorite way, if I'm not doing the burning method, is my chicken tractors. I'll literally just move my chickens forward every day, let them eat the grass. They're really good at weeding. They're good at scratching. They're great at fertilizing. They're getting all the bugs. They are so good at getting that soil ready for me, and I'll just move the chicken tractor forward. So it's a very easy way, if you have chickens or that sort of thing, to be able to get a site ready. So then the second step is determining your design and your layout. Today we're going to talk about only about 3 to 4 layers in a system. Now you can pay to have it done, and there's a lot of questions that I would definitely ask yourself first before you do that. Florida it's a double-edged sword, I think, right now in Florida. Florida has more permaculture and food forest designers of any state that I have ever seen. The downside, which is also good, it will be good in a few years, is many of them are young, inexperienced. They have 3 to 5 years of experience. And so they don't quite know what they're doing yet. I still think we need 300 more of them though, because in 10 years, they're gonna be phenomenal, but they're still on the learning curve. So just because it says it's really cheap online may not necessarily mean that it's gonna be the best choice for you. But I will say, you can do this on your own. You don't really have to have a designer to be able to hire that done. I have a blog article on permaculturefx.com that gives you literally step-by-step with pictures, diagrams, and all the things of how do you install a food forest by yourself. And you can totally do that. I would say where it gets more artistic is knowing what trees are going to survive on what site. You know, knowing that if you love avocados and you love bananas, those are not going to grow well together if you just plop them and place them. Avocados love to be high and dry. They don't like to have wet feet. They don't like a lot of nutrition. They like to be left alone. Bananas love to be low and wet. They love all of the moisture. They love all of the nutrients. So can you plant them next to each other? Yeah. Are they going to survive? Yeah. That's about it. You're going to get some fruit, but if you plant them well, you're going to plant around your avocado 3 or 4 species that are going to help feed your avocado. You're going to be putting a pigeon pea or a moringa that you can be chop and drop and putting it underneath of there. If you're doing bananas, you're going to go, I don't want the rats and the mice and the snakes to get them, so I'm going to plant Panadol around the base of it to keep the rats and the mice and the, you know, the nasty stuff away. So that's where it gets to be really artistic as a designer, as we get to go, okay, if this person wants an avocado tree, how do we create the best avocado system? And Florida avocados do awesome. My Brogdon got down to 17 degrees for 2 days and 18 degrees on the 3rd day in the freeze. And she was still flowering. She's fruiting this year. She just did not bat an eye. Now, if you're growing the avocado from a pit, you know, that you get at the grocery store, the Haas avocado, don't me lie to you or tell you the truth. It's going to be 8 or 10 years old and it's going to die. So the Haas avocado is meant to be, it was cultivated to be Southern California dry, arid climate. We are neither dry nor are we arid. So what happens with Haas avocados when you grow them from a pit, it carries the genetics of the mother trees that were around it that it was cross-pollinated with, which is only Haas avocados. And so they're carrying that genetics to our grocery stores, which will produce a tree. You'll get to be a tree about 8 or so years old, you'll start getting fruit. And then between years 8 and 10, it starts getting wilt, laurel wilt, and it starts rotting on the inside and it just dies. So the better thing to do is choose avocados that do really, really well in our area. And there are, I mean, I love me some avocados. My theory is we can grow avocados, and I'm proving this theory in my own gardens, is that we can start having avocados in June all the way through March. Like that's how many months out of the year you can be having avocados, and they don't have to be massive tall trees. Now, I don't like climbing a ladder. It's just not fun for me. I'm not afraid of heights. When I go to pick fruit, I don't want to get an A-frame ladder out because I'm lazy. So for me, I take my pole saw every year and I cut off all of the avocados at about 17-ish feet tall. That's not a real number. It's just how tall is the pole saw. So I just cut them off at that height every year. So they're big and they're bushy. And I still get 250 to 350 avocados per tree per year. That's a lot of avocados. And you're giving those avocados away to your friends and your family. But there's an avocado for every season. And I'm a nerd, so it's like people go, I want to grow an avocado. Well, what month are you here the most? Are you a slicer and dicer? Do you do more guacamole? Do you like putting them on sandwiches? Like, I'm a foodie. So if we're going to talk avocados, we're going to geek out and ask all the questions. For me, it's the same thing with like mulberries. I have 38 varieties of mulberries. I have a slightly addictive personality. So, and if you know me, I allow myself one healthy addiction a year because I ain't got time for the unhealthy ones. None of us do. So I get one healthy addiction a year. Now, if we're being honest, I've had the mulberry addiction for 2 years because it's like Pokemon Go. You just got to catch them all. So I just want all of them. So mulberries to me, it's like they're all fruiting at different times. Ooh, oh, that was sad. So there's some mulberries. Thank you for the sound effects. That was like the most perfectly cued thing that I've heard all day. So mulberries, you can have fruiting like 5 to 6 times a year. So dwarf everbearing will fruit 5 to 6 times a year. We'll see how good I can multitask and do this at the same time. And then you can get things like dwarf Thai red that are going to fruit 3 to 5 times a year, but the flavors are all different. The white mulberry tastes like vanilla cotton candy. The green mulberry is this big and it tastes like cucumbers with a little bit of sugar on the top of it. The dwarf Thai red is sweet and tart. The Shangri-La is going to be more like really, really juicy. So the mulberries to me are all different. So when we look at getting a peach tree or a plum tree, it's not just going to Lowe's or Home Depot, because the reality is Lowe's and Home Depot and these box stores probably have the worst fruit trees possible for Florida. And what's getting really deceiving is they say, Florida peach tree on it. Rubbish. That's marketing. You're selling the same peach tree in Georgia. How do I know? Because I know the genetics. And so they're getting really sneaky with these. And so you've got to find fruit trees that you're getting from somewhere that you know the grower, you know the seller, you have trust, you have rapport. I also don't want fruit trees that have been soaked in Miracle-Gro or some other chemicals. I'm going to be putting that back in my body. So they don't need to be USDA organic certified. That's just a money grab in my opinion. I've been at farms when they got USDA certified and it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So you got to know your seller and know that they're going to give you not just a peach tree, but what are the best peach trees for Flagler area, which would be Florida Prince, Tropic Beauty, and Tropic Snow, by the way. So this is basically kind of a silhouette of what the 4 layers are that we're going to talk about today. We have our top story layer, some kind of a nitrogen fixing tree, berry bushes, and an herbaceous layer. Now, you can do this as a little, an island cluster in the middle of your yard, and you can have all these oases, around the yard, which I think is good. But if you're in a space that requires a little bit more formal design, your HOA is probably not going to like these things all over the yard in little random circles. Also, I love to mow. I hate weed whacking, and I hate driving in circles. So for me, if I have to go around 50 fruit trees, it ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna put my audiobooks on and move on with my life. So I love to sit on that mower. Mowers to me are it's like an adult go-kart. It's like sitting on the tractor. I could do tractor work or sit on the mower literally all day and I'm a happy camper. But for me, I like to go in straight lines when I'm mowing. I don't like to be zigzagging and trying to dodge all the things. And I know some of you have probably made that mistake and you're learning from it and going, wow, I have like 50 islands around my backyard and I need to figure out how to get this thing under control. But what we can really do is we can start designing in a little bit more of a linear way for more suburban type spaces. So in suburban spaces, we're going to focus on repeating patterns. We're going to consider maximum growth heights. So we're not going to look at how big is the tree now, because if you plant 2 trees this far apart, beloved, you do realize they grow, right? Like they get to be huge. So you buy that avocado and it might be this big. Well, it could be a 30 or 40 foot tall tree, by the time it's all done. So we've got to give it space to grow, know our neighborhood regulations and our HOA regulations. And even in the PGA communities that I designed for, most of them are very happy to let you grow fruit trees, but they want it to look nice. They want it to look a certain way. It's all about their vibes. Consider your neighbor's line of sight. And then the biggest one probably should have been first. Complete one area before you move on to the next. Any other gardeners in here, mad scientists? Yeah, me too. We all have to have 1 or 7 areas of our yard that are like our mad scientists. I just wanted to try it. You have the picture in your mind right now. Complete the dang area. Just stop starting new areas. And I'm telling myself this and knowing that we're all still gonna have a mad scientist area, but limit it to 1. When we do a food forest, finish it. Come to that sense of completion, pat yourself on the back, and then reward yourself with another fruit tree when you're done. There really is a way to do this, but we've got to know ourselves. And we know as plant people, we're all the same. We're hoarders. Every single one of us in this room, you are weird hoarders. You can't throw the black pots away. You have seeds drying on your counter. You're a weird person that goes in the back to determine, I do this, of, okay, what tree do I need to pee on today? Because urine is a 1-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. It's 100% bioavailable to the plants, and it's an excellent source of fertilizer. And don't even get me started. So all plant people, we're weird. We're all weird. So if we can start making a little bit of organization in the midst of our chaos, it helps create beauty. Because what we don't want to do is walk into our gardens and have it be a stressful place of all the things I haven't weeded, the black pots that I need to organize by size, and then these ones that I think I'm going to throw away because they're cracked, but maybe I could use it because it has really good drainage. We just got to organize it. And I think with our food forest, this is a great place to start. Because most of you probably have a fruit tree in your backyard that you're going to go, okay, how do I build around that one tree? You know, it's the good thing, you bought a tree. You put it in the ground. Hopefully you put it in the ground and it's not still sitting in a pot. And then the next thing, just get your compost and wood chips. That's probably when people text me with a problem, go, hey, there's something wrong with my fruit tree. My response 100% of the time, take a picture of the base of your tree. Because if there is grass growing up around the trunk of the tree, I guarantee you that tree is lacking water, it's lacking nutrients, it's lacking probiotics. By just giving it compost and wood chips around the drip line of the tree, it will be a game changer for your fruit trees. Your production will, I mean, it's not a real number, but I'm talking not you. Your production will double in a year. It won't double in a year, but it will increase. It will increase. So this is the basic pattern. One of my former students drew this for me, and I still use it to this day. And it's so funny because I put it in professional designs, but I'm proud of my dang students. And I think, you know, it's important for us to celebrate, you know, kids. And so this is a simple fence line food forest design that's literally 6 feet out, 20-ish, 25 feet across, and you can fit in a lot of stuff. You can fit in 2 full-size fruit trees, 2 berry bushes, 4 understory plants, and a really good nitrogen fixer and a partridge and a pear tree. You can do all of your annual vegetables at the base of this, and it really is easy. And it doesn't have to be crazy and complex. So imagine you're looking into your backyard, and maybe it's behind your pool or your lanai, and you've got a 6-foot spot on the side of your fence that you know you could compost, you know you could wood chip, and you could get that done with a pretty small budget, actually. It doesn't cost as much as you think. So it's a very, very easy, very simple setup. Now, from the distance, what people are going to see from the road looking in is they're going to see 3 trees and 2 bushes with some pretty flowers underneath. It's not until you get close that you go, oh, that's a plum. Oh, that's an avocado or a cherry of the Rio Grande. It's not until you get close that you know that it's food if it's kept up well, if it's manicured a little bit. And it doesn't have to be, you know, super fancy. So step 3, and this is really, I would say, the first step of your actual planting, is planting your canopy trees first. So don't worry about getting all the bushes and all the little things in first. Get those big ones in the ground first. Those are the ones that are going to take the longest. You are in right now the most opportune time to plant avocados. So if avocado is on your list, April, May, June, July, prime season, because we want those to have as many months as possible to root in before the winter comes, because last winter was brutal. I mean, it put the hurts on stuff. So if you planted an avocado in September last year, it may or may not still be alive. You know, it may still be, you know, fighting and trying to come back. But I would say the first thing is get that canopy layer in the ground and whatever kind of ground covers you're going to use. And if you're poor or you're just cheap like me and you don't want to spend a lot of money on ground covers, go to Publix, go down the Hispanic aisle, get the package of the 15 or 18, I don't even know what it is, bean seed or bean soup mix. You know what I'm talking about? It just has like 18 beans. And when I go plant in a new area, and if you're farmers, you'll totally get this. So when I move my chickens, I mean, it's probably half the size of this room is like each of the coops have a fence that I move about this size. As I'll go to Publix, I'll grab a package of those beans, I'll take my pocket knife, cut it open, and I walk to the middle of the area that I just moved them, And this is how I plant, is I literally just fling it around and let the beans go all over the place. And then I use the drag and I drag over top of it. And then I plant the beans. The reason why I do that is because they're live seeds. And those beans as a ground cover are great nitrogen fixers. So yeah, you can eat the beans when they produce fruit, but the real gift is when those beans die, they're releasing atmospheric nitrogen back into your soil. It's not enough, and this is a big myth in the regenerative world, that if I plant beans, they're automatically fixing nitrogen. It's kind of true. So if you have a plant, basically what happens is on the base of that plant, in the rhizosphere, there are these little bacteria that connect to nodules on the roots of beans. And when that plant dies, those nodules release atmospheric nitrogen through a process called nitrification back into the soil. However, it only happens when it's dead. So if you have the bean plant, it might be releasing about 15 to 18% of nitrogen back into the soil. The moment you cut it back, you chop and drop it, you mow it, you till it back into the soil, it releases everything it's got. It's like Duck Dynasty. Uncle Phil would say, give it all you got, Godwin. And that's the give it all you got, Godwin moment, is literally when you chop and drop. And so planting beans as your ground cover, fantastic. But you've got to rotate those nutrients and cycle those nutrients back into the soil. So the first thing is get your top story trees and then start on your ground covers. So the top story trees are going to be the ones in the image right here. So these could be avocado. And these are some of the best ones that you can do right now. So if you're wondering what ones are really good to do right now, I would say avocado first and foremost, especially in this area. If you're a guacamole person, I like Brogdon. Cold hardy, they say down to 14. I think it's going to actually be closer to 15 to 16 degrees. Oro Negro is a really good guacamole one. Mexico La Grande is kind of a good multi-purpose one. If you like slicing and dicing, I like a good winter Mexican is great. Pancho is great. Fantastic is not fantastic, but it's decent. But there's pretty much an avocado for everything. Now, loquats are one of my absolute favorites. Are you familiar with loquats or Japanese plums? I've never met a loquat I didn't like. They're all edible. They're all medicinal. Even the leaves, when you pick them when they're young, you can make a tea out of it. It has no caffeine, but it has all of the antioxidants of green tea. So during the Tang Dynasty of China, those were literally worth their weight in gold because it was the tea for the king. So that loquat is not just the fruit is edible, but even the leaves of a loquat. Now, the loquat fruit do not all taste the same. So Yehuda is more like an apple flavor. Gold Nugget is like citrus pineapple. Sherry is very citrusy. So is Christmas. Champagne tastes like a mimosa. I love Jesus, but I drink a little. So it's a really good, it's got that like citrusy pineapple kind of flavor to it. Mulberries, already talked about those. I would say the one thing to consider with mulberries is the birds also love them and they will decorate your pavement. So if you have, if you're in a smaller backyard, mulberries may or may not be the right choice for you. Olives, the Arbequina olive is a great one. Peaches, my three favorites. Tropic Beauty is my number one favorite. Tropic Beauty is a really good sized peach. When I have a beard, it's like drip down your chin, drip down your beard. For a white peach, I like Tropic Snow. And then for canning or pies, because you want one that's going to hold up to it, like a little bit of crunch, would be Florida Prince is probably my three favorite on the peaches. Plums are really good to plant right now. The only plum that I like in Florida is Scarlet Beauty. All the other ones are trash. So I've tried Santa Rosa and Gold Coast and Suncoast and all the things, and I just go back to Scarlet Beauty. It's the closest you can get to like a grocery store plum. They're really high yield and they're self-fertile as well. Nectarine, which is basically the same thing as a peach without plum. Sun Racer, Raycer, is my favorite on the nectarines, and that one is also self-fertile. So these are all good ones for that top story to put in the ground. So in a small space like this, you would be doing like one tree over here, maybe my peach on this side, and then my plum maybe on the other side. And then we just continue filling in the gaps as you go down. So the next thing that you're going to plant are the nitrogen fixing plants and trees. That was the one in the middle. So for the nitrogen fixers, these are the ones that are going to be building my soil. I don't know about you, I do not want to be fertilizing for the rest of my life. Now I do have animals, so obviously I'm using compost, I'm using manure, I'm doing worm, composting and that sort of thing, but there's no reason over time we should have to buy fertilizer from a store, even organic fertilizer. Now, that being said, in Florida, your first 3 to 5 years, it will greatly help build your soil if you do whole ingredient fertilizers. So things like bone meal, blood meal, feather meal, compost, azomite. If you want a one-stop shop, the Espoma Organic Company uses all whole ingredient stuff, and that one is good. Now you got to be careful if you're just going and buying good organic fertilizer, because anymore, again, they're tricky. So, and I can't say the name of one, but it miraculously grows products and plants, and they have an organic line now. And so this nameless company that we all know has got the certified USDA organic, it's OMRI certified. And when you go down and look at their list, you see bone meal, you see feather meal, you see all this stuff, and then you see this thing called soy protein hydrolysate. Oh, what's that? Well, in the US, according to the FDA, soy protein hydrolysate is allowed to be 30 to 35% monosodium glutamate, MSG. I don't even want to put that in my Chinese food, let alone put that on my tree. Now, here's why sodium is so bad for your trees, because sodium, it salts the earth. So sodium doesn't just disappear when you put it on your plants. So when you look at, and I'm a scientist, I love looking under the microscope. I have like 6 microscopes because I love all the things. They're all for different uses. And when you test soil from the old citrus groves, I'm talking the ones that haven't been touched in 15 years, you take a soil sample. Here's what you won't find, which is what we all think we're going to find. We think we're going to find Roundup. We don't. The Roundup is gone. But what's still there is the sodium. So the back in the day, and even still now, the way that synthetic fertilizers deliver nitrogen to your plant is some derivative of salt. It's an NaCl something, O2, there's some chemical composition. It's a derivative of salt. So even after the chemicals disappeared from our orange groves, the salt is still there. So when you look down the citrus lanes where the trees actually are, the soil is still bare. And it was not from the glyphosate, it was from the fertilizers. And so when we fertilize our trees, it's so important for us to buy fertilizers that are whole ingredient, but are also not salting the earth. And Florida sand really does bind it significantly. Now there's ways to offset it, biochar and negative ion attraction, but that's a science lesson. But that middle plant, my point is, the middle plant is the plant that we're going to use as a sacrificial plant to basically feed our soil. So pigeon pea, that's a good nitrogen fixer. Vetiver grass that you let it get to be 6 feet tall, cut it down. Let it get to be 6 feet tall, cut it down. Cassia, another nitrogen fixer. Moringa, the tree of life, is a really good biodynamic accumulator. There's a lot of really great things that we can plant to fill in that number 2 area and do the chop and drop method. So basically this plant exists so that way I can feed all of my other plants 5 or 6 times a year. The next layer, and we're almost done, the next layer is our perennial bushes. So these are our berry bushes. These are the pollinators. Now, no, we can't grow Bing cherries in Florida. Costco will sell them to you, so will Home Depot and Lowe's. But you're going to be very sad when your cherry tree doesn't produce. But there are so many cherries and berries that we can grow in Florida that are just not really well known, but they are delicious. The yellow star cherry, or Patanga tuba, it's a cousin of the Suriname cherry. It gets to be like a large golf ball in size, looks like a yellow pumpkin, and it tastes like citrus pineapple. And it produces like crazy. Grumichama is very close to a Bing cherry. That's gonna be hardy, especially in this area, and it's usually salt friendly. Sweet almond shrub is probably my favorite pollinator that's naturalized in Florida. it makes the best honey. It turns the honey like a maple syrup texture or a color, and it gives it a flavor that's like vanilla maple syrup. So the honey is very, very unique from the sweet almond, and it's really what we should be growing instead of butterfly bushes, which are highly invasive in the state of Florida. The last one on here, Cherry the Rio Grande, is if you love Bing cherries from the grocery store, Cherry the Rio is going to be your go-to in Florida. It does have that kind of Bing cherry kind of flavor, but it'll grow in full shade all the way into full sun. So it's a very, very easy one to grow. They're slow to get established. So you're thinking 3 or 4 years before you get your first fruit, but it's really, really worth it. And even after the frost, I didn't cover mine at all, and she's producing like crazy right now. Step number 6 is then you're just filling in with all of the other small stuff, your tropical spinaches, your hibiscus. So next month, we're going to talk about growing your own perennial salad bar. So we're basically going to do an entire class on that understory level, the Okinawa spinach, the Suriname spinach, the katuk, all of the tropical spinaches that we can grow here. You know, yes, we can kind of grow collards pretty well, lettuces for about 2 months out of the year, but there's many spinaches and tropical greens that we can grow year round and that are perennial, that come back year after year after year. That's very, very easy and very good for you. Longevity spinach is probably one of my favorites. There's a really good double-blind scientific study that I printed off multiple times that gets into the longevity spinach and how it's used to normalize blood cholesterol levels. It helps normalize blood sugar levels, so it doesn't higher or lower them. It brings them back into homeostasis. It brings them back into that normal range. But what's also nice with the longevity spinach is you can also consume it when you're on Coumadin or warfarin because it doesn't accelerate the thinning of the blood. So there's some really cool benefits to these tropical greens that we can grow here. We've just got to learn the plants and know what's going to be the ones that are going to grow the best for us in our spaces. So these are tropical spinaches. Some of the other ones you can do in that lower level. So we've got our fruit trees, our nitrogen fixer, our berry bushes, and then we've got our lower levels, which could be coreopsis, it could be perennial peanut, it could be purple coneflower, it could be toilet paper plant. Y'all know toilet paper plant? Not mullein. So blue spur toilet paper plant will get to be 6 or 8 feet tall. The flowers are kind of like, what's that blue purple one in the north? Delphinium, like the bluish purple delphinium kind of flower. And it grows these really big, soft leaves, almost like mullein. It's called toilet paper plant for a reason, because think of like highly scented 3-ply toilet paper, and that's what this plant grows. It's super medicinal, and it's also a really good liver tonic. I'm a master herbalist, so I'm not treating or diagnosing your disease, but I will tell you food as medicine is a wonderful and beautiful thing. This would also be the layer of any edible hibiscus, the roselles, the cranberry hibiscus, the flowering maple that kind of looks like a Chinese lantern that you can eat the flowers. So that bottom story layer is just kind of what we fill in. Now for me, when I plant a new food forest, knowing it's going to be 3 or 4 years before it's going to be, max size, that means I have 3 or 4 years where there's a lot of open space between those young trees. You've already composted, you've already wood chipped. So guess what? That's where your tomatoes are going. That's where your eggplants are going. That's where all your annual vegetables are going, is as the understory in the midst of your food forest. Now, after 3 or 4 years, those trees are going to be reaching maturity. This stuff doesn't produce food overnight. Just to set very realistic expectations for you, and we're going to wrap up in 2 or 3 minutes, is the first year that food forest is not going to grow hardly at all. The second year, you're going to get some green growth, maybe a foot of green growth. The third year is when it's really going to start producing fruit. By year 5, that's when you're reaching the age of maturity. So like on an avocado tree, 5 to 8 years is when you expect a 7-gallon tree to reach maturity. So when you put that new avocado in the ground, could you get a fruit the first year? Maybe, but I would probably pick it off and let the energy go to establishing a good, healthy root system for the first year or 2 years. It's the hardest thing in the world to pick that one dang fruit off. But I'll tell you, the tree doesn't know a difference between 50 fruit on it and 1. When it senses there's a fruit, it uptakes more phosphorus, more potassium, and more minerals because it's trying to hold on to that one dang fruit so it's not sending out the root growth that it could be. So your first year or two of a new baby food forest, give it time. Let it get established. Enjoy that understory area, because what a great area to plant wildflowers, annual flowers, cut flowers. Great spot for your tomatoes, your basil, your mozzarella. Oh, sorry, can't grow that. So you're doing all of that wonderful edible stuff at the base of your food forest. And then by year 5, then you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get rid of these avocados fast enough? Because that one avocado tree at the 5 to 8 year mark is 250 fruit a year, very, very easily, if we're doing it well and if we're planting more in harmony with nature. And I believe that is it. So I know that was really fast. That was kind of like drinking maybe out of a fire hose for you. So what I'd like to do is we can take maybe like 3 or 4 minutes of questions. If you are ready to leave and you're on a time crunch, by all means, you can head out. There are some plants that are left back there, some seeds back there. Now, again, next month, Janine, was it the 18th? May 18th, same time, same place. The class that we'll be doing is on creating your own perennial salad bar. So I'll bring in some that you can try, bring in a lot of cuttings. So if you want to take some cuttings of those home, the nice thing about tropical spinaches, you just stick it in a pot of dirt and it just grows. Like they're super, you can't kill it. Like you can kill a lot of things. You can't kill tropical spinaches. So they are very, very easy.